Hey everyone, welcome back to your channel for real talk about aviation careers. If you're watching this segment, you're probably in your mid 30s, 40s, or even 50s. You've built a solid career, maybe in engineering, tech, military, law enforcement, business, whatever. But that dream of flying for a living just won't go away. You're thinking, is it too late? Can I really switch to becoming a pilot now? What about the money, the medical, the family? Well, I'm here to tell you it's absolutely possible. And it's probably more common than you think. Today, I'm going to give you a full guide for career changers 35 plus. And here is what we're going to cover. I'm going to bust some of those age myths that you've heard out there. I'm going to talk about why you need that first class medical first and how to go about getting it. And if there's deferrals, we'll talk about that as well and how to navigate that. And we're going to talk about how to leverage your transferable skills that you have from your previous career. You probably don't know it, but there's a lot in there that you can leverage when it comes to a pilot interview. So, we're going to talk about all those things today. If you're serious about a pilot career, drop a comment below and I'll try to answer everyone's questions based on this topic today. Let's build a community. Hit like and subscribe so that you don't miss my follow-up videos on pilot careers, and let's fly into it. Okay, let's bust the myth of am I too old? Let's just kill that thought process right now because the answer is no. First of all, there is no age limit, upper age limit, I should say, to begin flight training. As long as you can get the medical, and we'll talk about those, then there is no reason that you can't start. Some pilots start well into their 40s and 50s and get their pilot certificates. And let's talk about age because age is a concern about how long of a career you can have. Mandatory retirement at 65 is only for 121 operations. So remember, you can fly well past the age of 65 in 135 or corporate or training environments. So as a lot of these, as long as you can hold a second class pilot medical certificate, you can operate under these operators. So, it's even a little bit less stringent as you get a little bit older in these operations. So you have a good probably 15 to 20 years to do a 121 career, but your career does not have to end up after that. I know many pilots who fly well after 65. Some of them retire from 121 airlines and they want to keep flying. They do one of these sweet little cargo gigs they can find or something like that with a nice schedule. So it's never too late, and there isn't an age restriction for all types of operations. Bottom line, age isn't going to be so much of a barrier for you as financial readiness, medical clearance, and commitment are. If you're a healthy, motivated 35 to 50 plus person, it is prime time for you to hit the market because you bring some maturity, discipline, and life experience that the 20-year-olds who simply go to flight training and hit the job market don't have. So you have a leg up. But let's talk about getting that medical certificate, how to, and some of the pitfalls that you can try to avoid. Mature before you spend a single dime on flight school. Now, it's okay if you did a discovery flight, but before you go any further, you need to look into getting your pilot medical certificate. This is going to determine whether you are going to be fit to fly. Your pilot certificate never expires. your medical certificate does. That's what's going to determine if you can fly and what type of operations. There's 3 classes of medical certificates. You are going to want to look into making sure that you can pass the test for a first class medical certificate. This is the highest level, and that will ensure that you qualify for the highest level job from 121 passenger flying on down. Now, if you don't qualify for a first, but you can qualify for a second, guess what? You can still have a great pilot career. You just can't do 121 type operations, but you can still do all the other flying if you can get a second class medical certificate. So here's a few pointers and key requirements on things that they're looking for, and these might help determine, right, is there something here that's just going to knock you out? They do need vision corrected to 20/20, but that's corrected to. You can wear glasses or contact lenses, right? Hearing, conversational voice at 6 feet in a hearing test, right? It's just your standard hearing test that you get. You are going to have to do a heart ECG test if you're 40 or over 40. And, if you don't have any major disqualifiers like uncontrolled diabetes, certain heart issues and psychiatric conditions are a no-no, but there are some that are passable. So, don't take that as a no right out of the gate. There's a lot of things that you can get waivers for as well, such as color vision, ADHD, past depression. It's a process, okay? And don't let the process discourage you, but you can get a medical even with some of these conditions. And I'm going to tell you where you're going to be able to find a lot more information on that. All right, here are the steps to getting your pilot medical certificate. So first, you're going to want to use the FAA Med Express. It's MED, the letter X, and then press online to fill out a form. So go to FAA Med Express. There's a form you fill out, and there's some instructions there. So it's kind of like an application for a medical, if you want to think about it that way. And then you want to look up your local aviation medical examiner. So this is just a doctor that has been given the blessing by the FAA to evaluate pilots. So I'm going to tell you where you can find them. If you go to the website faa.gov and you type in the search aviation medical examiner, it will take you to a page. You should be able to search by location. I think you can type in like your city or your zip code, and there you'll be able to find an aviation medical examiner near you. Or a lot of times, if you go down to your local FBO, if you've already been down to the flight school and done a discovery flight and things like that, a lot of times they have a resource or a medical examiner that they use. So that's how you're going to track one down. I've got a few pointers, right? So you're going to do your consult with them. Be honest about your medical history. There are going to be a ton of questions. If you are dishonest or don't disclose something in your health history, that can be something that can ground you permanently as a pilot. So please don't do that. You have to be 100% honest about your health. Now, worst thing that can happen is they can say, no, you don't qualify. Now, here's what happens a lot of times is they call it a deferral. Your medical becomes deferred. All that means is that they would like more information on your condition. So you may have to provide, medical records or possibly a note from your doctor, et cetera, et cetera. So don't, if you get a deferral, don't just take that as a discouragement. It's just going to be a longer process. You're working with the government. We know exactly how fast they are at doing things, correct? So I would say before you like go quit your job or go get a loan and make any sort of commitments, please make sure you can secure your pilot medical certificate. This is going to be your very important one of your very first steps. All right, second career pilots, your transferable skills are going to be your superpower. I see a lot of pilots in the job market, when we're building resumes and things like that, they don't properly highlight their past jobs and their past experiences. And there are a lot of valuable skills in there that are very transferable to you, things that you can lean on when it comes to getting that pilot job and that pilot interview. Military vets, there's a skill set that we know you come with and a level of discipline that we know that you're good at also passing training, right? Usually had to do a lot of military training. There's a lot of things there, and especially depending on your job, military vets and engineers, if you've been involved in the aerospace industry at all, those are definitely selling points for yourself. It's not just about I see a lot of second career, what I call them second career pilots, and they come into this industry and they're very humble because this is something very new to them. And what I see is them not utilizing the fact that they have all this great experience behind them, that they're not just a student pilot, they're a student pilot that has all this extra knowledge that is helping them along the way. Another thing, any leadership, decision making under pressure, projects management, every one of those skills translates to the cockpit, translates to you being a captain and being in charge someday. Because anytime a pilot is being evaluated for a job, even if it's a first officer position, they're always looking at your skill sets, your soft skills of being a leader. Are they going to have to completely develop you into a leader, or do you already have some of those skills that you've built in another job, in another career? So you have a lot to offer. Your past experience is your superpower. You're coming into this industry with a maturity and some life skills and some leadership and just life skills itself that some of the other candidates that are much earlier on in life and careers do not have. All right, y'all. I saved the unpleasantness for last. Let's talk about the biggest hurdle that you're going to have, and that is going to be the cost of taking on this new career. So it's 2026 as of this recording, and the current estimate from zero to airline pilot, right? And this would be private pilot through, let's say, instructor ratings, because that's the way that a lot of people build their experience, is going to cost you somewhere between $80,000 to $150,000, depending on where you are in the country, right? More expensive areas will be a little bit on the higher end. Accelerated programs are going to be somewhere between the 90 and 130 range. So let's talk about how you can pay for this, maybe some ways you can work it. I know as a second career, some people are fully retired from their second career and they can go at this full time. And some people are still going to try to work and have an income while they're doing their training. So let's talk about some ways that you can fund your flight training and also how that's going to look if you have to mix it with still currently working. All right, so before we dive into how you're going to fund this, I'd like to preface it by saying this, that when it comes to flight training, the more frequently that you can train, the quicker you will progress, and quicker progression equates to less money, less hours. Because what happens is if you stretch it out, let's say you have to work and flight train and you're not training consistently, is there comes a point where what you've learned is practice to proficiency, and you're going to be striving for that proficiency a lot longer with your inconsistency. That's going to equate to you getting more flight hours. More flight hours means more money that you've spent. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through these different options of how to pay for flight training. So let's talk about the first one, which would be like saving your own money, because that ties into what I just said. So save aggressively. Please don't try to piece it out, because that is going to cause gaps and delays in training. I've seen people pay double for their ratings because of doing this. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I mean, you have to get a certain amount of flight hours anyways, right? You have to get to about 1,500 hours to be marketable to the airlines or other types of, commercial pilot jobs. So, okay, it took you 100 hours to get your private pilot certificate when it should only take 50 or 60. You still have to get hours. Those might not be pilot in command hours, right? So you may have to redo some of those hours. So be cautious of that. But again, yes, you still have to get the hours. I just don't want you to spend money that you don't have to spend. So save aggressively so that you can at least have enough for each course at a time. So, if a private pilot costs $18,000, save the $18,000 and then go knock it out. And even if you're working full time, that's possible. Let me give you a tip. If you're working full time, I would suggest starting your private pilot training in the spring/summer. So if you're a day shift person, you got plenty of time to get a lesson in every day after work when the weather is good and on the weekends. You've got to get 5, a bare minimum of 3 lessons in per week in order to adequately progress and not cost yourself a ton more hours and money. Okay. So what I would say is if you are saving to do it yourself, then just save for each course, right? Private pilot will be a course, save and do that. And then save and do instrument, right? And that's about the same amount of hours. So similar cost, might be a little bit more expensive airplane because of the equipment. But that is a good plan for kind of paying with your own money and trying to save a little bit and pay. All right, let's talk about some other ways rather than saving your own money. So, if you are a veteran or currently in the military, there is GI Bill funding that is accessible to you. So, I would check into that. It won't pay for everything, but it'll pay for a good amount. There are also scholarships available. So I would recommend start networking and looking into these aviation organizations. There's AOPA, Women in Aviation, Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, National Gay Pilots Association, Latino Pilots Association, Asian Pilots Association. There's more, y'all, that I could list. I'm trying to hit the top ones that I know of and have been to that are big. But most all of these organizations have scholarships. I'm not going to say a scholarship would pay for all your training, but it might pay for a good chunk. So start joining and looking into those. There might be some money there. All right, my least favorite recommendation is you can get loans via Sally Mae. There is a AOPA finance, or there are some credit unions and lenders out there that do aviation loans. The interest rates can be predatory sometimes, so please watch out for that. The thing I would say is look very carefully at the conditions on some of these loans. So some of these credit unions and lenders put a lot of very specific, like you need to finish within a certain timeline or have XYZ done by this date, or the loan like defaults and things like that. So please read all the small print. Interest rates fluctuate. There are a lot of schools that also do Sally Mae. They're not every flight school, but usually if they're accredited and affiliated, with university programs, you can get Sally Mae loans. Again, interest rates aren't great, but if you've got to go that way, make the dream come true, do it however you got to do it. Once you get your certificates, I don't recommend being a flight instructor if you don't want to be. We definitely need more passion in the industry, and we all want great training, right? We all want that great instructor. But if you do go that route, that is one of the jobs you can get at much lower time, 300 to 500 hours. They'll hire CFIs versus other jobs. So that is a way when you get to your time building, right, to not have to pay for the rest of those hours. You can start getting paid to fly. I'm not going to say it's great, y'all. When you start out as a flight instructor, it's going to be about 30 to 50,000 a year. And in fact, any time building job you get, so from about 300 hours, when you finish your flight training, you should be somewhere in the 300 to 400 hour range, right? So most of the jobs that you're going to get between that hour range and the 1,500 to qualify you for the airline are going to be under $60,000 a year, most likely. So you also need to plan for that as a second career pilot. You're probably not used to living on that type of income. So have a plan B. Now, some people, they got a retirement money coming in that pays the bills. And so this is nothing but a thing. This extra, helps pay for the flight training or whatever. But I'm telling you that time building phase, which is typically, depending on what you're doing for flying training or for time building, can last anywhere from 1.5 years to 3 years, where you're going to be at that income, probably below 75,000 income range for 1.5 years to 3 years before you hit the airlines, where then you're just above that range. So financially, I know that that's a thing with second career pilots, is typically they're usually used to living at a higher income level than that. But a lot of times you have retirement or supplemental income. So for some people, that's not as much of a problem. But I did want to make you aware you're going to be making very low pay for the first couple years. But if you have the dream, that doesn't matter, right? It's all good. It's all good. So is a career change to aviation right for you as a second career person? If your medical clears, your finances align, and the passion burns, right? Because I told you about what your income's going to be for a couple years, then I say go for it. Get your medical, go do a discovery flight, check out some flight schools, and definitely like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I get tons of advice to pilots from zero all the way up to their first airline interview, and I would love to have you along for the journey. Until the next one, I'll see y'all later. Blue skies, everyone.